Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. Happy President's Day. Thank you so much for joining us this morning or afternoon, depending on where you are. I am joined today with Tim Prukop from Eccker Sports and Diane Bloodworth from scoutSMART for our co-hosted webinar on how to maximize your NIL value and what to know about the NIL in the recruiting process. So we're going to kick it off to Tim and Diane for a little presentation. Please use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen to ask questions. And at the end, we will open up the floor for a quick Q&A. But without further ado, Tim, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks, Tori. It's nice to see everybody today. Thanks for taking some time out of your day to join Diane and I. We've been working together to figure out how to help student athletes both figure out how to maximize their NIL opportunities in the states that that's possible, and also for student athletes being recruited at the college level, how to go about making sure you understand what that means as well. And so I'm going to just go through a couple of quick slides to set the context on what we're doing and how we might be able to help. And then Diane will do the same. And then afterwards, we can answer any questions that you have to have. And currently today, in 2021, when NIL first became a reality in the world for college athletics, at that time, there were only a couple of states that allowed name, image, and likeness to be available to high school student athletes. Well, that's all changed rapidly. And now today, there are 26 state high school athletic associations, including the District of Columbia, that allow student athletes in the high school level to monetize their name, image, and likeness through endorsement deals and social media, and also maintain their eligibility to play high school sports. There's another 24 or 5 states that don't at this point in time, but are considering that. And so if you looked at the map in April of 2022, you would have seen at that point in time that there were 8 states that permitted NIL for high school. And today we're at 26. And the reason that most of the states are moving towards allowing high school student athletes to participate in name, image, and likeness is because they want to avoid lawsuits and there are several lawsuits now pending in several states across the United States. And then the second thing is they didn't want to have a state legislature actually create laws that don't actually work within how their school districts operate. And so that's why we're seeing such a move towards name, image, and likeness at the high school level. As a high school student athlete, whether you're being recruited at the college level or not, there are some core concepts to understand. Antitrust is the first concept, and where that comes into play is the Supreme Court ruled in 2021 that collegiate athletes formed a quote unquote workforce because by them doing what they did for college athletics, they helped their universities make millions of dollars for those universities. And so they consider them to be a classified group of student athletes. And they deemed that the NCAA had unreasonable restrictions on those student athletes because they restricted the educational benefits that they could get. And that's what really opened up the door for name, image, and likeness. Intellectual property is really the main thing that you need to be considered about as it relates to yourself. So any product or anything that you create in your mind or create are things that the intellectual property that you own. And when you own intellectual property, you can protect that through copyright and trademarks, and that becomes something that's of value to you that you can then allow others to use for a certain price. Collectives are groups of alumni and third-party organizations that are set up to help create an organization where money can be put into a collective and be distributed to student athletes. And there's a couple of key things to make sure that you understand as you're going through recruiting. Diane will get into more things like this. Is the NCAA said that student athletes could monetize their name, image, and likeness, but that NIL money could not be used to pay for performance. So a student athlete can't earn more money or less money based on how good they play in college. And it can't be used to induce student athletes to come to university or to stay at a university. And that third-party organizations cannot be involved in the recruiting process beyond the coaches. So if you're in the process of being recruited, make sure you're very careful about the conversations you're having with people that are not part of the athletic staff, and make sure that you understand that if the NCAA can determine that you did talk to a third-party person, or that you are being paid to come to school, or that there's pay for play in process. Those could all be violations that the NCAA could find. And so what we provide at Eccker Sports is what we call the NIL playbook. So we have video courses that go through all of the information about NIL, these core concepts that we talked about, financial literacy and building your brand. We have tools that help families understand the impacts of NIL education, the impacts of NIL from the standpoint of how it affects you from a tax perspective, your tax obligations, a financial perspective, what it might mean for you from a scholarship perspective, Pell Grants and other financial aid. And then we have a state-by-state resource hub that allows you to look at every state, understand what the bylaws are in that state so that you can make sure you understand what you can and can't do in each of those states. And the way that people generally are making money off name, image, and likeness today are through these endorsements deals. And what we wanted to make sure that you understand, that we think is important to understand, is that, one, before you sign any contract, make sure you have somebody that from a legal perspective review the contract to make sure that the obligations that you're signing up for and the term and all those things are things that are good and make sense for you so that you're protected. Anything that you make from an NIL deal over $400 is taxable on your tax statements, even if it's gifts in kind. So if somebody was to give you free access to a gym to work out, or if somebody was to give you a free pair of tennis shoes, if the value of that is greater than $400 over the course of the year, then you do have liability from a tax perspective. So make sure that you're considering that as you're looking at deals. And then from a recruiting perspective, we have a bunch of checklists on things to think about when you're going on a recruiting visit as it relates to that as well. So those are the kind of main things that I wanted to focus on, just to give you kind of a quick kind of set the context for what we're doing. And now I'll turn it over to Diane, who can talk to you a little bit more about scoutSMART and how they can help in this as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. And welcome everyone, especially you ballers out there that are in the scoutSMART database already. We appreciate you having a profile. A lot of you know, but really scoutSMART works with the college football coaches. We sell to the college programs and we help those college coaches find recruits that are going to fit and stay in their program. And because we do sell to the college programs, it is free for recruits to be in our database. Yep. Next slide. Thank you, Tim. And so you may have seen some of your scores on your scoutSMART profile. The college coach creates a fit score, and it could vary. You might be a better fit for an Ivy League than another school. So the coaches can really customize what's most important to them. But the scores you're going to see are shown here. They're on a scale of 1 to 9. You're going to see a stat score, and that is your high school stats. And we compare you to all the other players in your position. They can do a skill evaluation or a skill rating. We worked with the NFL Scout to come up with the skills by position. The college coaches, again, can customize that somewhat. And then your academic scores, which is really your GPA. Next slide. So what we want to make sure you're doing is that you've created a profile and that you're managing that. You can go to our website, scoutsmartrecruiting.com. You'll see it at the end as well to get more information on how to create and manage a profile. We do have a mobile app too. If you went into the Apple Store or Google Play and search for scoutSMART Recruit, you would also get the mobile app. And what we encourage you to do is put as much information into your profile as possible. Make it easy for the college coaches. There's data all over the place. You got huddle video links. You got things on your Twitter. There's things in Max Preps related to your stats. And we want to bring it all together to really make it easy for those coaches. Your goal is to make sure that coach is taking a look at your profile. So make sure it's complete and then make sure you're keeping it updated. If your GPA changed or you grew a couple inches last summer, make sure you've updated your profile. And the college coaches can change a setting so that when you update your profile, if they're following you, they'll get an update. Hey, James his height just went up from 6'3" to 6'5", and now he fits my criteria for an offensive lineman. So just make sure you're getting that information as up to date as possible. All right, next slide. a little bit about NIL. So working with Eccker and taking a look at what's going on in name, image, and likeness. We did add to our profile if the state allows NIL at the high school. So you'll see this profile in NIL is allowed. And because it is allowed, if this player, if Jason had any NIL deals, he could enter those into his profile, the name of the deal, the value, a little bit about it. We are also working on an additional score, which would be your potential NIL value. And we would look at things such as your level of play, your position, your social media, to come up with that score. Next slide. Yeah. So we know the recruiting process can be challenging, and we're trying to make it as smooth as possible for you and to really have a level playing field. So we put together a number of resources that we think can help you. For example, we have a video with Jeff Fisher, who's the founder of High School Football America. He's worked with the media his whole career, and he talks about how you want to interact with the media. We have one of the scouts from 247 Sports who does videos on how to improve if you're on the defense, how to improve if you're on the offense. So these are things that will be very valuable to you. How to compute a core GPA. So, and make sure you're thinking about that core GPA when you're a sophomore. Don't wait till you're a senior. So these videos are available to you on our website. The link is at the bottom of this slide for you to go out and take a look. And if there's a topic, like NIL is one that we know you're interested in, that's why we're doing this webinar today. But if there's a topic that you really want us to kind of dig deeper into, you know, DM us on Twitter or drop me an email, and we will see what we can do there as well. And then I think the last slide is just our contact information. We do a lot of shout outs on our Twitter at scoutSMART _. Shout out to Hector. He does a great job with that. And so if you want to get a shout out on Twitter, reach out to us. You can email me. Just stay in contact with us and keep that profile updated. And that's it for me, Tim and Tori. So if you want to move into the Q&A, I'm definitely ready for that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Tim, if you could actually go to that next slide with that code on it. I just wanted to really quickly, before we go into the Q&A, talk about the promotion that we have going on for all of you attendees.
I'm sorry, I have to hang on one second.
No worries.
I'm a little challenged today, technically.
No worries. Well, basically, we are
there you go.
offering the very last slide. We're offering a 50% discount to everyone who has attended today for the annual Eccker Sports NIL Playbook subscription. So if you use the code, you use that QR code and then use the discount code SSE50 to get 50% off of the annual membership fee. And this code is valid through March 30th. So you have, or March 20th, sorry. So you have 1 month from today to use this code. And like I said, or like Diane said, there's all of our contact information on this screen. So take a picture of this screen, use the QR code and the discount code SSE50. And now I'm going to open up the floor for some questions. We had a few come in while you guys were speaking, so I'll go ahead and read them off. The first one is, can taking a deal, an NIL deal in high school possibly impact NIL and collective options in college?
That's a really good question. Diane, do you want me to start? So a very good question. So, and this is why it's really important to have legal representation. Take a look at the agreements that you're signing up for. What we found early on for high school athletes in the states that did this earlier is that sometimes those agreements that an athlete would sign up for had no termination date on it. So there were a couple of high school athletes in Louisiana who did an endorsement deal, which means a company was paying for the right to use the name, image, and likeness of a student athlete and in return, the student athlete got some compensation, but there was no termination to the date of the contract. And so what would happen then is the obligation that student athlete had to that agreement would persist forever. And obviously, if you're doing a deal with a brand that's in conflict with a brand that's working with a university that you might be going to, that would cause a major conflict. So The big question is make sure that if you're a high school student athlete and you do a deal, I would make sure that you limit that deal only for the length of time until you enroll in a secondary, post-secondary institution or university. Because if you do that, then you're protected. Then any deal that you would do at a high school level would end before you enrolled in a university. And then at that point in time, there's no conflict from what you've done previously. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. We had another question, and I actually haven't been asked this before. Is there NIL for esports?
NIL for esports, of course there is. So name, image, and likeness is the ability to derive value out of my likeness because of who I am. So if a student was really well known in esports, or was getting into that, and there were companies that wanted to connect their brand to that student because of their proficiency in esports, and they certainly could. The question then becomes, is esports a activity that's governed by the High School Athletic Association or Activities Association in your state? And if it is, then you would fall under the same guidelines that a football player or basketball player would have. If it does not operate under the authority of the High School Athletic Association or the High School Activities Association, then there's nothing that would prevent you from doing that and playing esports as well. So just there's a lot of things that would depend, but yes, absolutely, somebody could take advantage of their esports prowess for name, image, and likeness opportunities.
Very awesome. I did not know that. Diane, this question I think is more for you. Someone asked, when you talk to college coaches, what are they typically looking for in a recruit?
Yeah, one thing I see a lot of is a lot of recruits just sending out their huddle link to coaches. And one of the things coaches tell us is they're just overwhelmed with all these DMs and emails from all these recruits sending them huddle links. So, college coaches like it when you do your homework, when you did a little research about why you think you're a good fit for that program. Make sure it's a two-way street here, guys. So make sure you really are interested in that university, that's somewhere you want to go and be a student athlete. And if it is, then do your homework. Look at their depth chart. Look at the coaching style. Look and make sure, and then craft something that's really specific for that coach about why they need you there. I mean, in scoutSMART, we have the disruptor score, and this is the percentage of plays you disrupted the offense. Maybe you throw out to that coach, hey, coach, I know you're looking for guys that can make a difference on the defense. I'm a disruptor, and here, I had 37 hurries last season. So make yourself stand out. Just another huddle link is not going to do it.
If I could add to that, Diane, having worked with lots of high school athletes and having coached at the college level myself, it's really important that, as Diane said, that you stand out in your communications to the coach, and that there's a specific reason as to why you think you're a good fit for them. And so if you just send a blank email, hey, coach, I'm such and such from this school and I'd like to be recruited, that's not going to have any impact on whether or not they're going to recruit you or not, because they're going to determine you based on just how good you are athletically. However, if you say, hey, dear coach, my parents both went to the University of Texas. My grandfather went there. I would love to be a Longhorn. I've always wanted to be my whole life. And I want to go to get my law degree there when I'm done playing. That will stand out. In addition to the stuff that Diane's talking about as it relates to your specific skills or things like that. So you want to make sure you really personalize those communications to coaches. And if you're not interested in school, don't waste their time either.
Totally agree, Tim. Yeah.
And I think something to piggyback off of that, another question is, how do I know if I'm a D1 recruit?
Because Division I college coaches are calling you.
Yeah.
Diane, go ahead. I'll
Yeah,
respond.
no, I mean, that's fair. And I would just say, guys, I think everyone wants to be a D1 recruit. That certainly is the starting point. But be open if you are getting offers from non-D1 schools, or if it doesn't look like you're going to get that D1 offer. There's a lot of good D2, good, they're good FCS schools, good D2, D3, NAIA. They offer academic scholarships a lot of times. So kind of keep an open mind. There's just not that many people that are going to play D1 football. So kind of keep your options open. We do have a projected level of play in scoutSMART as well, which kind of helps the college coaches look for those guys that are going to probably be a fit for their program.
Yeah, and if I could just add on to that, particularly in football and basketball, Division I coaches are scouring every high school and every team that they can to find the best players. And so, and all of the athletes that are good enough to play at that level, for the most part, are recognized and identified by the time they're about sophomores or juniors in high school. So if you're being recruited or being connected by those guys, then you are. If you're not, that doesn't mean you can't become one. It just maybe not today. Maybe you've got to grow. Maybe you've got to get faster. Maybe you need better film or whatever. But as Diane said, there's over 1,000 colleges in the United States that play football at the collegiate level. And what I'd also encourage you to do, if you love football and you're good at it, and you may not be size-wise or whatever good enough to be a Division I athlete, use football as a way to get into a school that you might not normally be able to get into. So if you have an interest in becoming an engineer and you want to go to Colorado School of Mines, or you want to become a doctor and you want to go to a specific medical pre-med program, or there's a law school that you might want to go to, that if it wasn't for something else you can't get into, use your athletics to be the thing that gets you into those schools as well. So that's something else to think about. That's really a great thing to use athletics for if you're not going to be a Division I athlete.
Agree. And we recently sent out a young man who wasn't quite academically ready to play Division I football, but he is going to go and play at the junior college level. He's a great athlete. And while he works on his academics, he will probably have a chance eventually to play at that D1 level. So there's all kinds of scenarios. And that's kind of why I was saying, keep an open mind. There's multiple paths to get to D1.
Absolutely. I think this next question is kind of perfect to gateway it back to the topic of NIL, because it's a common misconception that I think a lot of people think. But the question is the top 1% of student athletes the only ones getting these NIL deals?
So there's a great blog on our website called the 5 Myths of NIL. And I would encourage you all to go to eckersports.com and read it, because it's really a good article that kind of discusses this topic. The top 1% 5-star athletes are always going to have opportunities that the rest of us generally don't. And good for them. And we're happy that they have those opportunities. But the majority, something like 60%, if you took football off the list of NIL deals in collegiate athletics last year, 60-something% of the NIL deals were done by female athletes at the college level. And there is a lot of opportunities from, significant financial type opportunities all the way to just working with local mom and pop businesses in your area that are available for student athletes. And then, from a high school perspective, building your digital presence, building your social media kind of brand is a really important thing to do, because in addition to your notoriety that you gain as a student athlete, having access to a large audience is really important to brands. And that's why you see so many athletes, particularly female athletes, that have such great access to big followings, that have such great brand endorsement deals. I mean, you've got Olivia Dunn at LSU that has over 7 million TikTok followers now, that makes a couple $1 million a year. And I mean, right now she's hurt. She hurt her leg early in the season. She's not even participating, but she's got a great opportunities. There's the first female a Native American athlete has done an endorsement deal now. Using your name, image, and likeness is like building your own business, where you have a brand, which is yourself. You have a social media platform, which is a way to distribute your brand, and then people want to connect to your audience, to the people that you influence with their brand, so that you can help them sell their products. That's what NIL is all about. So it's not just about the quarterback getting millions of dollars to play at Alabama or something like that. There's great opportunities for everybody.
Absolutely. And just to add to that, just thinking about branding and everything, we are in the process at Eccker Sports. We're in the process of creating some educational videos for you athletes on branding and how to make money on social media, the breakdown of the different types of ways you can make money, and the breakdown of the app. So that will be added to our website very soon, within the next few weeks. And that will be available on the back end with a membership. So just wanted to add that, throw that out there. We have another question for you, Diane. This is very specific to scoutSMART. How is scoutSMART stat score calculated?
Yeah. So I can't tell you everything because some of that is proprietary, but what we do is we look at the stats by position, and then we calculate a score. We compare you to all the other players in that position. So if you're a quarterback, we're going to look at your attempts, your completions, your QBR, your interceptions. You're going to get a little ding if there's a number of interceptions, your TDs. We're going to look at all those things and assign a score and compare it. If any of you folks are out there or stats folks, we kind of fit it to a bell curve. And so you're going to end up in one end of the curve or the other on a scale of 1 to 9.
Awesome. Thank you. Another one, this is more of a general question. Who is responsible for making the rules about NIL at the high school level?
That's a great question. So think about what's happening here. The reason NIL and whether you can or cannot do it is based on whether or not you're still eligible to participate in high school athletics that are governed by the high school athletic and activities associations. In the bylaws of the High School Athletic Association, they describe what it means to be an amateur, what you have to do to be eligible, what you need to do if you're going to move from one school to another, and all the rules that go in with all that stuff. And that's where the authority lies as to whether or not somebody can participate in NIL and still be eligible to play high school athletics. So it's the High School Athletic or Activities Association in your state that actually will govern this for you.
Very good. And this is a question that I'd love to hear the answer from both of you. What is your biggest advice to parents and student athletes after experiencing this year's massive shift in high school NIL market and the recruiting process?
Well, I think my biggest advice is just to be educated because it's changing, it's shifting. I've been working in the football recruiting field for a while, and I've seen more change in the past year than I did the past 6 or 7 years. So my recommendation to you would be, to have a trusted source of information and education to keep up with all these changes.
Yeah, I would add to that. I would say there's a lot of misinformation that's out there today about name, image, and likeness and what's going on. Most of the stories you hear on the internet about how much money a kid didn't sign for are largely inaccurate. So like Diane said, having a trusted partner to make sure you have the accurate and up-to-date information. So for today in Virginia, if you're a student athlete, you cannot participate in a name, image, and likeness deal and participate in the Virginia High School League. However, we know that's about to change. And that will probably change in the May 2nd meeting when they finally ratify the new language that they've written. So if you were a student athlete in Virginia, knowing that, and you had opportunities that you were thinking about, that would be good to know. So I think, make sure that you use the resources that you can trust that give you accurate information. And the second thing that I would recommend, having had two of my children play collegiate athletics, having coached in the college level and all that stuff, don't let NIL be the distraction that keeps you from staying focused on the most important thing, which is getting a college education and having all the opportunities that come from that after, regardless of how well you do in playing sports. And it's really important to find a place where culturally you fit, where your long-term goals for your life are set out there, because we all know that it's less than 3% of kids that play college sports that ever play professionally. So the likelihood is that you will not play professional sports. So how do you take advantage of the college opportunity, set yourself up for the rest of your life, and put yourself in a position to be, create more value for yourself in the long run than not. So don't let NIL distract you from staying focused on that.
Awesome. Well, we're just about reaching our time limit for today. So thank you to everyone who took some time out of their day to join us. And I hope this was very informational. And thank you for Tim and Diane for being here and answering all of those questions. You will all be getting a copy of the slides and this recording. And like I said, this promotion code for $25 off, 50% off is good through March 20th. So use the code SSE50 to register at eckersports.com for a NIL Playbook annual membership. And thank you again for all being here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Diane. It was good to see you again.
You too, Tim. Bye, Tori.
Bye.